They wrote the history books in gold and ink, but they forgot to mention what they had to drink. Before the treaty, before the sail was unfurled, a biological glitch conquered the world. Let's talk about the fuel of the crown. Let's talk about why the water went down. Look at the map of the pre-industrial freeze. A continent starving, brought down to its knees. The water was a phantom, a pathogen threat, a treacherous poison they learned to forget. So they turned to the fields, turned grain into fuel, and brewed small beer as a corporate tool. This wasn't a choice, wasn't pub crawl leisure. It was a survival caloric seizure. Pregnant mothers hydrating on low-grade yeast, pouring ethanol down to feed the belly of the beast. The transgenerational shadow of developmental freeze, spreading fetal alcohol syndrome like a genetic disease. A whole population with their frontal lobe stunted, sent out to the wild where the humans were hunted. Executive function erased from the brain, and that is the bedrock of the imperial reign. Sip the liquid bread, let the spirits take control. The architecture of intoxication for the soul. No empathy, no water, just the pressure in the head. A dysregulated army marching where the angels dread. They call it civilization, but it's built on a defect. A biological empire that we're forced to respect. Look at the conqueror, study the type. The historical hero, whether the textbook hype. The age of discovery, arrestless aggression, driven by chronic neurological depression. They had no long-term planning, no impulse control, just a volatile, violent, and real soul face. Wasn't a bug in the code of the state. It was a feature designed to accelerate hate. Behaviorally dysregulated, ready to strike, calorically dependent, living just like a slave to the grain that the monarch controlled. Selling their minds for the beer they were sold. Structurally resilient, too numb to see pain. Easily shipped out to die in the rain. They sail the high seas on a liquid bread diet to keep the domestic population from riot. Let's dissect the words that they used to enslave. The Latin roots dug in a biological grave. Sovereign, high on the throne, controlling the grain that the peasants had grown. The masses bound tight, sharing the yeast that blinded their sight. Spirit once meant the breath, co-opted for liquor that drove them to death. To calculate, think, but reduced to the fluid they forced them to drink. The doctrine of discovery didn't fall from the sky. It was drafted by minds that were permanently high on a low-level buzz. A centuries-long trip that normalized violence on every slave ship. To sustain the machine, they needed it to fix. Sugar, tobacco, and cocoa in the mix. And ecologically constrained at the North Fuel Drive that needed raw resources just to keep it alive. They looked at the other who drank from the spring, who didn't serve liquor, who didn't serve a king, and called them savages, void and untamed, because their clean water brains couldn't be framed. They exported the sickness, they called it the law, but it was just the tremors of a broken jaw. So when they talk about the glory of the crown, remember the pint that kept the people down. No grand philosophy, no holy design, just a continent drunk on fermented vine. The sober truth of the intoxicated past. The empire fell, but the hangover lasts.